So I want to welcome Elizabeth Bachman, my good friend and colleague and guest for today, and Jacob, who was here to kind of cheer us on, and everybody else that is listening, perhaps by replay. So I'm Tina Greenbaum, and I am the co-founder, not the co-founder, I am the founder of Mastery Under Pressure, a program that is designed to help to elevate the ability to manage stress in high stakes situations. And I work a lot with people who are great leaders like Elizabeth, because when the leaders buy into what we teach and what we preach, it filters down to an entire organization. So welcome, Elizabeth. And the concept of this program under the hood is that patterns that are created in childhood impact us as grown-ups. And I have been interviewing fabulous people and fabulous leaders to really look at what are some of the underpinnings that lead to their success, some of the issues that they've had to cope with. We're all human. Nobody escapes the human condition. And that's really a big part of what we want to share here, to inspire and to teach people what leadership looks like, kind of down in the down dirty part of it. And also with that level of resilience that people have the ability to bounce back with great skills and great finesse. So, Elizabeth, I'm going to let you tell us more and more about you, because actually I don't have your bio right in front of me. And I have found that when we share the things that you want to share, the bio sounds even better. So tell us just a little bit who you are, what you're up to, and then I'll kind of go into my questions.
Okay, so I'm Elizabeth Bachman. My company is Strategic Speaking for Results, and this is career number 4 or 5, maybe for me. I have pivoted many times over the years. What I do now is I work with high-level executives, mostly women, who have a seat at the table, but still aren't being listened to. And thus they see promotions and recognition going to louder, flashier people. So what I do is I help them become visible and valued so that they shift the way they're perceived by shifting the way they communicate. And that way they get the results they need and the recognition that they deserve. And I came to this after 30 years as an international opera director. So I wanted to be an actor, and then I became a director, and then I became an opera director, which is where I found my artistic home. And I did that for 30 years, and now including running an opera company in Austria. So I ran a bilingual opera company as a joint Austrian-American venture for 11 years. And that was, that now informs what I do at the moment.
Wow. So we're going to find out, this is just a really interesting mix, right? Going, and particularly the women that you have chosen to help. So let's find a little bit about the background. So could you tell us a little bit about your family of origin, just a little bit about your background, things that would be really helpful for us to know?
Yeah. Well, I grew up in Portland, Oregon, and I'm the oldest of 3 children. My parents did stay together for their whole marriage, which is I'm very grateful for. As the oldest child, and I discovered theater very early on. I like to think I'd like to think I've been dedicated to the art of great communication since I first walked on stage at the age of 5. And afterwards, I heard my mother say that I was the best gall darn bunny rabbit ever to grace the stage of the Hillside School. And I was hooked. Whoa, applause. And I loved it. And so I was going to be a famous actress on Broadway. And then I realized in college that actually I didn't have to be an actor. What I really mattered to me was the feeling of community you get when you put together a show. And I used to say I wanted the famous people to know me. I didn't have to be famous myself. When I started working with people like Luciano Pavarotti and Placido Domingo, I realized that uh, the famous people also know the names of the chauffeur and the dresser and and the door person and so forth. So um, it didn't necessarily mean that I got as famous as they were, but they sure knew my name.
Okay.
Yeah.
So let's go back again. Given that you came to some of these realizations, what impact did your family have on your parents? What did they teach you? What were some of the values, the core things that have kind of stayed with you and helped you kind of get through this life?
Well, the values were integrity, um, and loving art. As the oldest child, I was the responsible one, also the bossy one. So uh, when I changed my major in college from acting to directing, my little sisters said, "Well, duh, you boss everyone around anyway, so you might as well just give up and get paid for it." They also told me to value languages, and my mother's mother was very much part of my growing up, and she spoke 8 languages, so and loved literature, and she really wanted to be her plan had been to have a salon of artists and writers, and she was going to be Madame de Sévigné and have a famous salon. And then when the Depression came along, she wasn't able to pursue that dream, but she made sure that we kids all learned that we, at the very least, were fluent in French. If not, I went on to German, Italian, and Spanish as well, and chose a profession where I could use those languages.
Which is very unusual for an American, right?
Yes, yes,
Right,
yes.
because we speak English.
And really, the intention was to be a citizen of the world.
Mhm.
When I figured out that one could actually work in opera, there are places you could start and work your way up. I found that, my great loves are music, theater, languages, and travel.
Mhm.
And opera has all 4. And for 30 years, it took me around the world, which was great. Also, uh, the family dynamics were to love intellectual, to do that. Some of the things that have also affected me that I didn't learn until later were not so helpful was I I consider myself a recovering perfectionist, if you will, that
Yes.
no matter what I achieved, it wasn't good enough.
Yes.
And part of that need for perfection came from very young, at age 5 or 6, watching my mother get mad at the politicians on the TV. So my mother hated hypocrisy, and she used to yell at the politicians on TV. And I was 5 years old. I didn't understand that this was a political argument. I thought she was really angry. And, when you're a kid, it becomes all about you. I thought, oh, if I do something wrong,
So
if
I'm
I,
just going to stop there for a
yeah.
second because that is so, so, so important that when we start to look at these patterns,
Mhm,
children by their nature always blame it on themselves
mhm,
because they don't understand. There's nobody to sort of translate it for them. So just what you're saying, it must be me. It
yeah,
must be me.
yeah.
And how that carries through, if we don't rewrite that story, it has a lot to do with why people don't feel very good about themselves. So thank you
Yeah.
for bringing that up. Yes.
Well, carrying all of that and also some of the things that you're just taught as you're socialized to believe, especially as a woman, not good enough, not being good enough. I know that men get it, women have their own flavor.
Mhm.
And that's one of the reasons why now I work, I really work with uh, corporate women, helping them to get parity, gender equity, pay parity, things like that for women and minorities, because I recognize how those patterns affected me.
Mhm.
All those years that I never learned how to negotiate a salary, for instance.
Mhm.
So I would go work for an opera company for cheap
Mhm.
because I would take whatever they offered.
Mhm.
And then I would find out that a colleague who was exactly the same level I was had negotiated twice the salary
Mhm.
because he'd asked.
And you said
And
he,
he, yeah,
because
yeah,
he
it's like
had
some of
asked.
my
Right.
male colleagues who
Right.
had been taught how to negotiate, but I was a good girl. Good girls. I don't know if your mother ever said good girls don't brag, but that was one that I grew up with. It took me years to learn how to market myself. But also, there's this odd thing that girls are taught
Mhm.
by society. I don't think anyone does it on purpose
Mhm.
of don't ask for what you need, just drop a hint. And then if you're a good person, they will recognize what you want and give it to you without you having to ask. And that's a very old pattern. It's one of the things that my clients deal with all the time, where they say, why I wanted that promotion. Why didn't they give me that promotion? I said, did you actually ask for it? No,
No.
and that was me. I didn't know how to ask for what I was worth. And it's still hard for me. I
Yeah.
have people that I talk to. Actually, you, Tina, have been a guest on my podcast many times, and I have interviewed you at least twice about the art of negotiation because yes, my clients need it, but I need to hear it. So I was like, okay, Tina, tell me again about how to negotiate because it's one of the ones that the 5-year-old in me
Yes.
is afraid if I ask for too much, they'll get mad at me. And that's a pattern from the 5-year-old me that is
So
still hangs
another thing
around.
I again, thank you, for being so open about it, because what you're saying, Elizabeth, are the issues men I know, and Jacob is here to kind of vouch for it. Men have their own issues, but they're not necessarily the ones that we have. In general, women in general have this. We're the gatherers, we're the homemakers, that's the way we're designed. The men are the hunters. Boom,
Mhm.
I see something, I go after it. Again, many times they have their own patterns that interfere with that, but just by the way our brains are, we are different.
Yeah.
And without an education in some way, shape, form, or another, we all end up just kind of replaying and replaying and replaying these stories. So for you to be able to start to recognize this is a pattern that is getting in my way, right? When did you start to really kind of notice that?
Some of it I knew, but I was baffled by.
Mhm.
So I remember right out of college moved to New York with my friends from college and pursuing a career in theater in New York. And one friend of mine who was a writer, he wasn't in theater, had been offered a writing job. And he said, I asked for twice as much as I thought they'd give me, and they gave it to me. I'm going to buy myself an IBM Selectric typewriter. That was the big deal in 1980, I think. And so, um, and I thought, how did he do that?
Mhm.
I don't know. I wouldn't know how to do that. And and then then I just sort of muddled along after that. But where part of it I've learned when I started teaching it, basically, you teach what you have to learn.
Mhm.
So I learned when I was teaching people how to show up, how to act as if they knew what they were doing, how to speak it's basically what I do now is executive coaching through the lens of presentation skills. But I spent the last 15 of the 30 years I spent as an opera director also working with young artists. And I was one of the few teachers who talked about money because, you're supposed to be in the arts. You're not supposed to think about money grubbing, whatever. And so, which is one of the reasons why people in the arts companies get away with paying artists so little.
Exactly.
And because people are willing to do it for the sake of the art. And there are a lot of other reasons behind that. Having run an opera company myself, I understand this. But nobody at school teaches you how hard it is. That has changed in the last 20 years or so. Schools are now teaching entrepreneurship to artists because you have to be an entrepreneur.
Absolutely.
But in my day, we weren't taught that. And I really wish I had learned that. I wish someone had taken me in hand and helped me, and hopefully at a time when I would have been willing to listen.
So
I'm not sure I
again,
would have listened in the end.
I'm just, kind of taking a lot what you're saying and really kind of expanding on it so that people really kind of get. I have worked with you, Elizabeth. You are the most competent person, intelligent. I mean, you have been my assistant in a program that I wouldn't want anybody besides you, just kind of managing the people that I had to work with. And so here I know you, and I know how capable you are. Okay. And at the same time, the things that you have struggled with are things that people struggle with.
Yeah.
So this life is not easy.
Mm-hmm.
Right? Being successful
yeah.
is not easy, just kind of the resiliency that you've had and the willingness to come back and, okay, so how did you do that? I wouldn't know how to do that. The
Yeah.
evaluation, the self, awareness and curiosity.
Well,
How
I've taken your Mastery Under Pressure course, and it really blew my mind. So, I've been your client as well as you're being mine. So it really the things that you taught about how to recognize what's going on
Mhm.
has been, and some of that I think comes with maturity, but also to remember that your 5-year-old self is still
It's
still
sometimes
talking.
operating, running the
Sometimes,
show.
yeah, yeah. Um, yeah, so some of it is just experience.
Mhm.
Some of it is teaching. Um, and, learning, hearing myself say something and thinking, I should be taking my own advice here. Um, and then often when I got into the coaching business and took classes on how to be a coach,
Mhm.
how do I translate all this knowledge into something that's going to pay me as a coach? I also was around people who were talking about gender equity and pay equity. And I did a lot of work with a wonderful group called How Women Lead that was very influential in the movement to get women on corporate boards in California. It was one of the groups that worked to persuade then Governor Gavin Newsom to pass the bill that requires having women on boards. And I was helping the CEO talk about it.
Mhm. Right.
That's the thing that I'm particularly specialized in, is helping people recognize what they're good at, and then how do you talk about it in a way that isn't obnoxious or bossy, but gets you the recognition that you deserve.
Right. So again, coming back to your very early training and core values, right?
Mm-hmm.
How do I how do I communicate well? How do I hold these values well? How do I hold myself up? And at the same time being aware that I've got, a little voice there that might not be so helpful. and
Mhm.
in spite of that voice, right, kind of moving forward. I mean, that's really kind of the message that you're giving, in spite sometimes,
Yeah.
right? I don't need to listen to you right now. Thank you very much. You're not
Yes.
very helpful.
You know, there's a phrase at one point in my mid-30s, I was going through a very difficult time. I was really just having a big crisis. And I got into a coaching program that was going to help me change some of the harmful behaviors that I was indulging in some things that were not so helpful.
Mhm.
And there was one friend, and I got into it because of friends who had already also gone through this work and told me about it. So I knew where to go.
Mhm.
And I remember once calling a friend, actually the same one who bought himself a typewriter for the thing, and saying, "Does it ever get easier?" I think actually I was sobbing because is it ever easier? And he said, "No, but it gets faster." And that's what I keep coming back to are the tools. So learning through this, I didn't have the tools in my 20s to negotiate
Mhm.
for a better salary.
Mhm.
And it took me a long time to get those tools. Now I have more tools and I've practiced them. So it's easier. But it comes from asking someone to say, I don't know how to do this, or what do you do? How
Yes,
do you manage this?
right. So that, Elizabeth, is really kind of the meta message
The
here,
tools.
the
Yeah.
tools. You know, it's not that people don't want to change. It's not that they don't want to stand up better. It's not that they don't want to quiet the voice that just kind of brings them down. It's not that people don't want, they don't know how. They
Yeah.
just don't know
Yeah.
how. And to learn the kinds of things that you have learned, and certainly the things that I've learned and then teach, it's almost like a different language. It's a different
Mhm.
approach. It's a different viewpoint. It's a different mindset, as we use that word. A very different set of tools than the ones that come the most naturally to us, which are the ones of, you know, I feel rejected. I don't feel good about myself. You know, I use a substance to kind of take away the feelings that I have that I don't like, and so on and so
Mhm.
on and so on and so on. And again, being able to manage yourself emotionally,
Mhm.
I believe, and I think that you're with me on this, this is the key to everything.
You
It's
know, there are a couple of metaphors that I go back to over and over. When, I trained as an actor. I thought I was going to be a famous actress, and and I realized in college that I was a better director than I was an actor. And then from there, I knew I was never going to be an opera singer. Couldn't sing that well, but I could be a director, and that meant that I wasn't on stage though. So
Mhm.
I didn't get that applause. And one of the things I remind people is that recognition is one of the basic human needs. It's okay to want to get applause and to celebrate what you do. So one metaphor I came up with was my mother. Well, my parents loved the arts, and I'm really grateful that they said, if you want a career in the arts, go for it. They supported me and helped me do that, which was very helpful. Yes, you could get a degree in theater. I think if I'd been a boy, I would have gotten something more practical, quote unquote. But it was okay to get a degree in theater. And uh, my mother, among other things, was a locally known ceramic artist.
Mm.
She made wonderful pots and she made wonderful cartoons in clay, these beautiful cartoons in clay. She was very well known in our town. And so I thought about it and I thought about her and I thought, okay, I don't have to be the cup or the bowl or the vase. I can be the potter who shapes the clay,
Mhm.
and you shape the clay and then I can help create something wonderful from the basic material by shaping it, which is what you do as a coach when you're giving tools.
Yes.
And then the other lesson is you have to shape it and let it go. So as as a stage director and then as a teacher, you have an idea in your head of what it should look like, but it's all different compared to, say, let's go back to our cup. It depends on the composition of the clay, and you dip it into the glaze, you paint something beautiful on it, and you put it into the kiln, and the fire bakes it and cures it into being something marvelous, which might not be what you planned. You have to let it be what you can be. And that's what you have to let people
Yes.
be, who they are.
That's a wonderful, wonderful, wonderful metaphor and example of you kind of recognizing, I love this, but that's not where my brilliance is,
A friend of mine asked me a couple of months ago about discipline. She liked the idea of discipline. And I thought, ugh, discipline to me sounds like punishment. How could I accept the concept of discipline? And I thought about it. What I can embrace is the discipline of my craft.
Here we go.
The difference between craft and art. And so in some way, say with the opera singers, I taught them the craft so that became automatic, and they could walk out on stage and open themselves to art, to inspiration. I would say go out and be a channel for Mozart. Channel Mozart through your experience so that what comes out is, yes, the inspiration from the universe and from the genius of Mozart, but also shaped to fit that particular audience. And that's what I do with speakers. Is you've got someone who's got a great idea. I mean, I love working with people who want to get their thought leadership out there. Say, okay, you've got your ideas. How do we shape it to make it perfect for that particular audience? And that's my craft, is to teach them the craft, the tools, so that ultimately, if you've really got a message, it comes from someplace greater, and you can shape it into a format, into a language that your listeners can hear.
Beautiful. See, so we had this wonderful opportunity for you to really kind of let us get to know you. And
Thank you.
I really, really appreciate that. And I appreciate you, Elizabeth.
You could tell I care about it a lot.
Yes, I can. Okay.
Yeah.
And Jacob wrote something, and it is, and that's the beauty of what you're transmitting, is the passion. The passion, the education, all the pieces that have gone into making you who you are, so that you can share your beauty with everybody else. So I really appreciate that. And Jacob says, with clarity. So we're actually out of time, but Jacob, if you want to ask one thing or make one comment, I know he always has some great observation. Let us hear from you.
Oh man, some pressure. No, that Elizabeth, you're an excellent storyteller. And so I really, really loved listening to your story, but also hearing some of your little just nuggets of knowledge. One thing about with presentations and a lot of what you spoke about, especially in your mid-30s story, resonates with me, and in terms of like being able to, in this day and age as a coach, tailor more content to your clients. Have you started to use like AI, like or generative AI, with some of your clients in coaching sessions in regards to like presentations and content?
I have always tailored what I do to the individual. That was always my job. And from as a stage director, as a teacher, as a coach, that goes without saying. Where I do use AI is for my own marketing, because I find that I'm so close to my own material. It's hard. Sometimes I think, oh, I've said this so many times. How do I make it interesting? So I will use Chat GPT to help me with this, and to help me phrase it, see if there's ideas. So it helps me to get past writer's block, basically.
Yeah, very good.
Yeah.
Thank you so much. That's a great question. I think we're all kind of facing this right now. How can we use it helpfully and honestly and with integrity? And it kind of brings me things that I never thought about before. So, so very helpful. So thank you once again, Elizabeth. This is Tina Greenbaum from Mastery Under Pressure. And what we do is bring on people like Elizabeth and lots of other wonderful leaders to show that patterns that are created in childhood do impact us as grown-ups, the good and sometimes the things that are not quite so helpful. And the process of transformation is a process. And so I work with, again, as Elizabeth does, with high achieving executives, teams of people who really want to impact their entire organization. Because when you guys buy in and you become these gracious speakers and people and communicators and lover of your employees and the people that that are beholden to you, it filters down to your whole organization, and that's how we change the world. So thanks once again. You want to get in touch with me, Tina Greenbaum at Tina at Mastery Under Pressure, and Elizabeth, we will have all of your contact information and your beautiful podcast here this afternoon that we can share with everybody. So thank you so much. And we will be back again actually in 2 weeks with another gentleman from Chicago who has a very, very different story, but also another wonderful human being. So Tina from Under the Hood from Mastery Under Pressure. Thanks so much.